If you look around, everything is designed to be efficient. We have instantaneous payments, delivery algorithms that promise fulfillment faster than you can blink, and, well, global data flows measured in milliseconds. And yet, why does actual daily life feel so strained? Why does this system, this rational system, feel so sticky or clogged when you actually try to use it?
It's the central paradox of modernity, isn't it? That feeling you're describing, that's not just random friction.
Okay.
It's a measurable structural pressure. It's when a new policy is announced, but the local administrative burden suddenly triples overnight, or your rent goes up, but the infrastructure around you is, stagnant.
And that structural layer, that's what we're calling the life membrane. It's the tool that reads that invisible stress.
Precisely. Think of the life membrane as a sort of physical film that reads the tension in the invisible infrastructure supporting everything. Logistics, urban planning, policy deployment. It shows us exactly where the system is starting to bend or even fail.
So our mission for this deep dive is to map the three fundamental pressures this life membrane identifies. That's shear, calcification, and OS compatibility error.
Right.
And this isn't about criticizing specific policies. It's about understanding the underlying architecture of why things break. It's the shortcut to being structurally informed.
We're moving from just describing a broken outcome to diagnosing the exact mechanical failure.
Let's start with the most dynamic one, the pressure that really embodies the speed of modern change. Velocity difference, or shear. No, that's a physics term, right?
It is. It's the force that causes layers to slide past each other. And in this context, shear is the pressure created when a fast-moving layer is connected to but is constantly pulling away from a slow-moving one.
It's too fast change tearing at the slow layer underneath.
It is. I mean, think of two tectonic plates shifting, that friction, that stress at the boundary line.
Yeah.
You're talking about that kind of pressure, but in our social and economic systems.
Okay, so we need to identify the components. What defines this high-speed layer? What are the plates that are moving too quickly?
This is where digital velocity just reigns. It's the algorithmic systems, e-commerce platforms, logistics networks, high-speed financial trading.
The things optimized for now.
Exactly. But it also includes these huge rapid shifts like the spread of subscription models or cashless payment mandates. Even sharp demographic spikes or declines in a local area, they all demand an instant reaction.
And what are these high-speed systems tearing away from? What's the low-speed layer?
These are the layers that are fixed on deep generational cycles. So the physical infrastructure, housing, roads, water, rail, they're all governed by, 30 to 50-year planning horizons.
Right.
But just as important is the social infrastructure. Things like household spending habits, the inertia of local labor markets, employment customs. These things pivot with the speed of an iceberg.
But hold on, isn't the whole point of tech innovation to create this difference?
Yeah.
Isn't shear just another word for efficiency? Where's the line between good speed and destructive strain?
That's a critical question. The distinction is really in the cost and the wear and tear. In a healthy system, the low speed layer adapts. It upgrades.
Okay.
Destructive shear happens when that low speed layer is just forced to bear the entire cost of the velocity without ever getting the resources or the time to upgrade itself. It's the difference between replacing a worn part and just grinding the existing part into dust.
That frames it perfectly. So let's look at the actual wear and tear, the evidence of this shear in our daily lives.
Take the simple spread of digital payments. The push for universal cashless transactions, that's the high-speed layer, and it generates huge friction when it meets the culture of cash use in, say, small shops or among the elderly.
They can't just flip a switch.
No. The pressure is placed entirely on them to absorb new fees, new hardware, and the logistics example is maybe the most obvious one.
The 24-hour delivery.
Right. That demand, fueled by algorithms, is this tremendous high-speed force. It creates accumulated wear and tear on the physical roads and, crucially, on the human infrastructure, the delivery drivers. The algorithm doesn't pay for road maintenance or for driver burnout. The life membrane registers that cost as shear.
So that accumulated wear and tear is the first pressure point. Okay, let's pivot from that dynamic friction to something static, maybe more insidious, membrane calcification. It sounds like arteries hardening.
It's an excellent analogy. Calcification is exactly that. It's the domain where layers that are supposed to be fluid and adaptive become rigidly fixed, unresponsive.
So if shear is about friction from movement, calcification is about pressure from a lack of movement.
Exactly. It's the absence of movement creating a bottleneck.
Where do we see this hardening the most?
In systems that are locked into decades-old assumptions, urban planning is a big one, often based on population models from the 90s, even as populations are now declining or aging
That's
rapidly.
housing prices.
Housing prices becoming completely detached from income growth. It's a market mechanism that should adjust rationally, but it just doesn't. The system is just too rigid.
So rational forces are just bouncing off a hardened system.
Precisely. The core insight here is that calcification blocks rational responses. The system fails to react to things like inflation or big demographic shifts. All that distortion just builds up internally.
And that explains the silent crisis concept from the source material. It's not a big bang. It's a slow motion failure.
Yes, think about essential services like childcare. You'll see intense policy discussions about increasing support. But if the underlying supply structure, the buildings, the labor force, the zoning laws are calcified, nothing actually changes.
The discussion moves, but the infrastructure doesn't.
It doesn't. Or look at disaster preparedness. The risk goes up every year. That's a massive external pressure. But the regional planning, the necessary updates, they just stay locked in place.
That's calcification at its most dangerous.
It is. It's the system guaranteeing failure because it can't flex. A huge objective of analyzing the life membrane is finding these two quiet areas where movement has just stopped, even as the pressure mounts.
So you have the friction of shear, the rigidity of calcification. The third pressure point, OS compatibility error, feels like the most frustrating one on a personal level. It's why so many logical ideas fail when they meet actual people.
Yes. This is where rational, top-down logic meets local human culture and just recoils. The tension happens when the top-down logic policy, digital systems, macrofinance, fails to mesh with the ground-level reality.
The culture, the family, the day-to-day practices.
They're running on fundamentally incompatible operating systems.
So what are some examples of this highly rational top-down logic?
Think of anything that pursues optimization through standardization. Big projects like digital government rollouts, smart city developments, or policies that demand rapid labor mobility. On paper, they are perfectly logical.
And then that beautiful logical plan smashes headlong into the messy, slow-moving ground-level reality.
Which is defined by human inertia. It's the reliance on cash and paper, it's established family structures and assumptions about care that aren't in the plan, it's mortgages and rent renewals that stop people from moving.
That rings so true. You try to do some simple administrative task online and realize the whole system assumes you have some specific piece of software. Or still use a fax machine.
That's the human cost of that incompatibility. A rational government mandate to integrate ID systems can create an immense real-world burden for local clerks and citizens. Why? Because the ground-level system runs on paper and trust, not a centralized database.
The rational system fails because it's designed for a user that doesn't actually exist in that local culture.
It's the single most important mechanism for making that clog visible. It's the moment the human element just forces the system to stop.
Now that we have these three lenses, shear, calcification, and compatibility error, we can look at how they show up differently around the world. The source material suggests the dominant pressure really changes by region.
Oh, absolutely. If you apply this framework to Japan, the primary issue is a powerful mix of shear and calcification. The low-speed layer housing, urban structure, the legacy job market is incredibly heavy.
It's very rigid.
Extremely. So that shear, that velocity difference, hits household finances with maximum force. Things can't update, and they can't move out of the way.
And how does that compare to the high-velocity culture in the United States?
The U.S. is predominantly defined by compatibility error. The high-speed layers, IT, finance, are overwhelming, but they constantly clash with a deeply decentralized, often polarized ground-level reality.
So a top-down solution from the federal government might not work in, say, Texas or California.
Exactly. The non-compatibility is often at the cultural level, clashing with religious beliefs, local politics, or just the huge legal differences between state and federal systems. The system is always arguing about which OS is even allowed to run.
Moving across the Atlantic, the EU and the UK must have a different mix.
They do. Here, the primary issue is calcification intersecting with OS incompatibility. The policy logic, the EU framework, is strong, but it's famously slow-moving and rigid.
Calcified.
Yes. And that rigidity creates powerful friction when a fast-moving issue like mass migration or a geopolitical shock collides with the slower, localized realities of different member states.
And finally, China's urban zones. That's a picture of just maximum stress.
It is. For them, it is maximum shear load. The urban areas are hyper-fast, but that creates this enormous pulling force against the vast rural areas, which are super low speed. And critically, the real estate boom that powered it all has now hardened, locking in debt, and maximizing the shear burden on the whole system.
What's really fascinating here is that these strains, once you see them in the life membrane, they don't just stay there. They propagate. They move into other systems.
That is the essential insight. LM-01 is never an isolated problem. The strains always propagate to the next layer, the corporate membrane, LM-02, and then ripple out to the final layer, the purchasing membrane, LM-03.
Okay, so let's trace that ripple effect. Let's use the delivery example again.
Sure. We start with the LM-01 strain. Shear from 24-hour delivery, wearing out labor and roads. That stress moves immediately to the corporate membrane. LM-02 is the logistics companies facing sharply increased costs.
For labor, for maintenance.
All right. They can't run the system at that speed anymore without it costing more. And that cost is inevitably passed on. So LM-03, purchasing, is you seeing higher shipping fees or product prices, which then changes your behavior.
And calcification would follow a similar path, from rigid housing to consumer choice.
Absolutely. LM-01 sees calcification as housing prices harden, detached from incomes. This propagates to LM-02 corporate because companies can't hire people who can't afford to live nearby.
The talent pool shrinks.
Exactly. And to cope, those strained employees change their LM-03 purchasing behavior, shifting to online shopping to save time and money, changing where they spend their leisure time.
So the life membrane is the entry point. It's the first layer that tells us where the distortion is building before it hits a company's balance sheet or our own wallets.
It explains the why behind tomorrow's headlines. So for you, the learner, there are really 3 core takeaways from this.
Okay.
First, prioritize structure over impression. When you're reading analysis, look past the immediate claim and focus on the underlying structure. What layers of velocity are interacting here? Second, read emotion as gradient. Don't dismiss strong public emotions like anger or frustration as just noise. Use them as sensors to see where the maximum structural pressure is concentrated. Emotion shows you where the friction is causing the most pain.
And the third.
Third, always use the 3 tensions, shear, calcification, and compatibility error, as your diagnostic lenses for any structural problem you encounter, whether it's a traffic jam or a bureaucratic headache.
This really shifts your perspective. That frustrating government form isn't just poor design anymore. It's a live diagnosis of a compatibility error.
And I would challenge you, the listener, to go one step further. Consider which of these 3 tensions is most actively affecting your own neighborhood right now. And then think about what nonlinear jump that strain might cause in the corporate or purchasing spheres next year. That's the power of reading the life membrane before the crisis actually hits.